Hi everyone, welcome back. It's time for the Natasha Denona I Need a Nude palette. I know I'm a little bit late. I would have liked to have gotten this video up sooner, but mine took a while to get here. So here we are, but that's okay. I cannot wait. When I tell you the excitement I had for this when I saw the sneak peek photos, I don't even know what to say other than this may be the most beautiful palette I've ever seen. So I cannot wait to dive into it. We're going to do some swatches. I'm going to do 3 looks with you, and then we'll do a few comparisons as well. I hope you're excited. If you're new here, my name is Blair. I do all kinds of beauty and makeup content here on YouTube every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. I hope you'll subscribe, and let's just get into this beautiful palette. All right, I don't want to spend too much time on this part because I know so many people have done these things already, but I mean, this palette deserves a moment because I mean, it is beautiful. I did open it up when I got it yesterday. I did not swatch it. I have not swatched this yet. I wanted to do it when I filmed, but I mean, come on. Come on. I know this is being called a more cool-toned palette from Natasha Denona. Now that I've seen it in person, I feel like the photos online made it look a bit more cool-toned than it actually is in person. This palette definitely has some cool shades in it, but I would say it leans a little bit more neutral. I think it's not warm, in my opinion. I've seen some people saying it's warm. I don't think it's a warm palette. I think it leans neutral. I think you can get a warm look from a few of the shades in here, but I don't think it's a straight up cool palette either. I think it kind of falls in between, which is honestly what I would prefer out of everything. I love a good neutral palette. I feel like a lot of times palettes that we see are either extremely cool or extremely warm. Most of the time, extremely warm. We don't even see very many cool palettes. To me, her Glam palette, that screams cool to me. This one doesn't. This one definitely screams neutral, just in my opinion. All right, let's get into some swatches. Honestly, you guys, this palette is so beautiful. It's gonna pain me to mess it up. It is just so beautiful, but we gotta use it. All right, let's do some swatches. I'm gonna use my first shade. It's kind of painful, but the first shade, I gotta go through these colors because they're so beautiful. So the first shade is Stone, which is a light medium warm taupe, which I love. So there's Stone, really great basic transition shade. Whisper, a metallic light nude pink. Oh gosh, only 2 shades in and I'm already just so excited. I mean, look at that. Then we have Ella, a foiled warm fawn is how this one is described. Ooh, that is pretty. Kind of bronzy, a little bit taupey. Vague, a warm dusty rose. Really beautiful. Yeah, I love that this shade is here because this is definitely one that can really add a good bit of warmth to a look that you're doing. I love that she included that. And the final shade in the first row is Travertine, which is a metallic soft amber. Moving on to the next row, we have Delilah, which is one of the new Wet Effect shades. I can't wait to see how these compare to the Makeup by Mario Ethereal Eyes shades. Then we have Silhouette, which is the darkest shade, a matte coffee bean brown. Love that there's a dark brown in here. Then probably one of the shades I'm most excited for is Muse, which is a sparkling foiled champagne. I mean, come on. Honestly, the hardest part of making this video is deciding what shades to use because every single shade in here I just want to put on my eyes so bad. Then we have Fair, which is a light misty rose is how they describe it. Super, super fair, but always good to have a shade like that. And the final shade on the middle row is Filigree, which is a foiled medium neutral brown. Moving on to the final row, we have Wit, which is a matte light warm rose. Sheen, which is another one of the Wet Effect shades. Glossy Wet Effect Warm Champagne. Tender, which is a medium taupe. Mesh, which is a light dusty rose. This shade is interesting. It looks a little bit more taupey in the pan, but then when you swatch it, I guess it does have more of like a rosy undertone. And finally, we have Mia Sparkling Wet Effect Icy Pink. All right, let's do look number one. I did my brows and I did a little bit of eye primer on my eyes. So let's go into the palette. Honestly, I have no clue what I want to do here. All right, we'll go in, since this is going to be the most everyday look, I guess. We'll go in with Fair, which is right here, the lightest matte shade in the palette. And I'm just going to take this all over, so on the lid and up into the crease. Very, very light, so it's not going to show. It's not going to show up a ton, especially with that primer underneath, but I'm gonna apply that all over. This kind of goes without saying, but this palette does have a lot of glitter in it, so I'm doing my eyes first. I don't love doing my eyes first, but I'm doing it just because I can tell just by the swatches that, I mean, this glitter is intense. So, I mean, I have glitter all over my hand from those swatches, so just keep that in mind. All right, let's do a little bit of Mesh, which is this one right here. I think this is the one they say is a light rosy shade, but to me it looks more taupe in the pan. Like I said, it does have a rosy undertone, so I'm putting this in my, or I'm going above and creating a new crease because my eyes are hooded. That shade is such a perfect transition shade. All right, the question is which one of these shimmer shades are we going to use, because they're all screaming at me. I think I'm going to go with this one, which is Whisper, and I'm just going to use my finger with this, I think. And I'm just going to add this all over the lid and even drag it up a little bit. That shade is so soft. It's shimmery, but it's not that like wet looking shimmer really. It's beautiful, very soft, and I feel like a good one for every day. If you want some shimmer, but you don't want like that extreme wet effect look, this one is really good, really beautiful. Okay, you could definitely leave it right here for every day. I'm gonna add one more shade, just a little bit of this tender shade here. But this, to me, this is like a perfect everyday eye look. Super easy, not much at all, very natural, but a little something. But I'm gonna take just a little bit of tender in the outer corner. Just a little, just to add a little bit more depth out there, but like I said, you could definitely just leave it the way it was. Everyone has a different definition of what is like an everyday look to them. I could see myself adding the shade and also just leaving it the way it was because it's beautiful both ways. I'm gonna do my face makeup. I'll be back and we'll finish up look number one. Almost done with look number 1, but I want to do a little bit on the lower lash line. Pretty basic like I normally do, so I'm going to take the shade Fair and the shade Mesh. So these two here, I'm just going to kind of tap in to both shades and run this on my bottom lash line. I think that's it. This is the most everyday look of the 3 that I'm going to be doing, so I'm going to leave it there. All right, I'm going to do mascara, lips. I'll be back and show you the final look. All right, here is finished look number 1. I love this look so much. I love the eyes when we finished earlier, but after I put the base makeup on, it just kind of all came together. In fact, this combination of base makeup, so nice, so nice. I don't think I've paired these things together before, but perfect eyeshadow look. Like I said earlier, without that like outer corner shade, it would be even more minimal and everyday, so you could always skip that if you wanted to, but I just think this is perfect. It's so soft and airy and feminine, and it looks like you did something but not anything crazy, you know what I mean? I love it. I think this is absolutely beautiful. So this is look number 1, a very natural, little bit glam, everyday look. Let's get started with look number 2. It's a different day, but I've already done my brows again, primed my eyes, and we're gonna go back into this palette. I'm thinking this look, I'm gonna make it a little bit warmer, a little bit more pinky with these 2 shades that lean a little bit more rosy in here. I'm gonna go in with a little bit of Stone first, and I'm putting this in the crease to start out with, just to kind of have like a more neutral base down. All right, now I'm gonna go into this pink down here, which is called Wit. It's like the lighter pinky shade of the 2 in here. And I'm switching to a much smaller brush with this shade. And I'm gonna do this in the outer corner, and then I'm gonna bring some of it over into the crease where we put that Stone shade also. I'm using the BK Beauty A502 from the Angie Hot and Flashy collab to do this. I can't even decide what shade to use next. I think I'm going to go with this one next because I've been dying to use this. This is Muse. It's the color that's in the very center of the palette, but I mean, it is just, oh my God. Look at that, you guys. I mean, honestly, that shade could just go all over your eye on its own if you wanted just like a super, I mean, look at that. Kind of reminds me of Galaxia from Natasha Denona that's in that new Mini Starlet palette. I think this one is almost even more wet looking than that one. And Galaxia has a bit of like a blue sparkle in it. This is more of like a bronzy silver sparkle, but wow. Okay, now I'm gonna go into this shade up here, which is Vague. This one is more of like a kind of a dusty rose color. And I'm going in with that same A502 from BK Beauty and adding this in the outer corner. I'm not really gonna bring this up into the crease. I'm just gonna kind of leave it there. So this shade is definitely one of the warmer ones in the palette, but it's a really beautiful color. All right, honestly don't know what else to do with this look because I feel like it's perfect the way it is. I wouldn't change anything about it. I really wanted to use Mia or Sheen, which are 2 of the Wet Effect glitters here, but the Muse shade just like totally took over. You're not gonna be able to see it even if I put that there, I don't think. But let's just take a little bit of Mia, which is the light pink glitter shade, and we'll just add a little bit of it over the top. But I mean, you can see that a little bit, just adds a little bit more pink to that wet sparkle, but wow. I mean, that is just, I have no words. I have no words. That is absolutely beautiful. I'm gonna add a little bit of this mesh color, which is like the light taupey shade. And I'm gonna add a little bit of this in the crease up here. But I mean, this palette is so effortless. I mean, you could get the most beautiful look in about 2 minutes with this palette. Honestly, probably even quicker than that. I'm gonna do some of my makeup. I'll come back and we'll finish up the bottom lash line. Okay, let's finish up the lower lash line. Okay, I'm gonna take the pink shade down here, which is Wit, and I'm gonna use a small little pencil brush, and I'm gonna apply that kind of all over. I want to use Vague, which is the rosier color up here, and I'm just gonna put this in the outer half. Just slightly. I'm gonna stop there, so I'll finish the rest of the makeup and then I'll be back and show you the final look. All right, here is the finished look number 2. If you like shimmer and sparkle and rosy pinky tones, this look is for you. This is the most beautiful glam wet looking eye. I mean, that is so beautiful. That middle shade, which is Muse, this one right here, I mean, that one on its own is just stunning. Probably one of the prettiest wet metallic shades like that I've ever seen. I mean, you saw it when I swiped it on with my finger. So beautiful. And then I did add this because I thought it would go well with these colors, and I think it does. This Charlotte Tilbury Pillow Talk eyeliner, which is more of like a wine color. So that's it there. So I used that to make a little bit of a wing. But overall, love this whole eye look so much. The next one, I'm gonna go smokier, so we're gonna use some of the darker shades for look number 3, but I gotta say, I think this one is beautiful. I'm back, we're gonna do look number 3 now. This one's gonna be more smoky, so we're gonna use the darker shades in the palette. I think I'm gonna go into Travertine up here first, and this is gonna be like the base for the eye. So I'm gonna apply this all over the lid. Actually, I was thinking that shade might be a little bit darker than it is, so we may add something else in a minute, but I'm basically just tapping this on the lid and just a little bit above that. I love that color. It's a really beautiful taupe. I'm gonna go into Tender, which is this darker kind of grayish matte. And I'm gonna apply this in the outer corner and up into the crease. So far, I have not had one issue with any shade in this palette. Like no blending issues, nothing. Even that Muse color that we used in the second look, that really shimmery color, that I didn't even have very much fallout on my face after using that, and I just used my finger. I didn't use any glitter glue or anything. I literally just swiped it on with my finger and I didn't even have much fallout. And that shade is very, very shimmery. So that is pretty miraculous. Okay, I'm gonna keep adding the shade until it gets as dark as I'm wanting it. All right, now we're gonna go into the darkest shade in the palette, which is Silhouette. It's a matte, I think they describe this as a matte coffee bean brown. And I'm just gonna add this in the outer corner, kind of flick it outward a little, like you would a winged liner. Going in with Mesh down here, which is another matte, the light kind of taupey color. I'm gonna add a little bit of this to this crease here, and then I'm gonna kind of buff around this outer edge just to kind of soften everything. And then I may clean up the sides a bit with a makeup wipe. I'm gonna use a makeup wipe and just kind of lightly clean up this edge over here just so I don't go down too far. I do that sometimes. I'm gonna also go into the darker shade Silhouette, and I'm gonna use a small little brush with this and try to line my eyes a little bit more, create a little bit of shadowing. You won't be able to see it a ton with that dark shade in the outer corner, but I love doing this with palettes. All right, I'm gonna stop here for right now, finish my makeup. I'll come back, we'll do the bottom lash line, and then we'll finish up look number 3. Okay, let's finish the lower lash line. I think we might do this shade over here, which is Filigree. And I'm gonna add this to the lower lash line. All right, then I'm gonna go into Tender again right here and just kind of go over that also. I don't always do a ton on my lower lash line, but this look is a little bit darker, so I wanted to do a little something. I'll take a little bit of sheen which is down here. It's one of the wet shades. And I'm gonna pop a little bit of this in my inner corner, but just to add a little bit more brightness there. One final thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take a little bit of stone up here in the corner, and I'm gonna add a little bit of this right here in this inner part of my eye. Not like all the way in, just to like bring a little bit more of that depth in there. I don't always do that with my eyes just because I have a lot of darkness under my eyes, so I always feel funny about adding darkness like towards the inner portion. But since this look is a little bit darker, it's gonna add a little bit, and I think that's it. All right, I'm gonna finish the rest of the makeup and I'll be back. Okay, this is the finished look number 3. I love this one. This is a little bit more glam, a little bit more on the smoky side, but not super smoky. Y'all know me, if you watch my channel, even when I do like darker colors, I try to make it a bit more muted and just not as stark. I like very muted colors and muted eye makeup looks on myself personally, but I love these colors. I mean, I hope I remember how to redo this look at some point for something because I absolutely love it. I love everything about this. All right, I want to finish up with some final thoughts on the palette and do a few comparisons for you, but I'm not going to spend a ton of time swatching things and comparing it. I'm going to do a few things, but if you want a ton of swatches and comparisons to this palette, go watch Lauren Mae Beauty's video that she did on this palette. If you have not seen it, please go watch that video. It was so detailed and incredibly well done. She did a fantastic job on that video, and she swatched literally every single palette next to this palette. So definitely go watch it. I will have it linked in the description box. If you've seen it, then you know what I mean, but she did an incredible job on that video. So if you want to see even more comparisons and swatches, go watch that video for sure. Even if you don't want to see it, it's a great video regardless, so go watch it. But I want to do a few comparisons for you. First thing I know I want to compare this to is the Ethereal Eyes palette by Makeup by Mario, which if you have been watching my channel for a while, you will know how I feel about this palette. I absolutely adore this palette. It blew me away from the very first time I tried it, and I love it. I love everything about it. I'm so sad that it's discontinued. I have a feeling a lot of the looks you get with this, you could absolutely get with this palette, which is amazing because I always feel bad recommending or saying I love the Ethereal Eyes palette when you can't get it. But what I want to do is swatch the 3 wet shimmers in this palette, so these 3 right here, in comparison to the wet shades from the Natasha Denona I Need a Nude. So I'm going to swatch the Makeup by Mario. So these are the Makeup by Mario swatches here. So these lid topper shades from this palette are so incredibly thin and they have no base coat to them. So they're really just all sparkle, which is what makes them so beautiful. So I want to compare and swatch the other shades in the Natasha palette, which are Delilah, which is this here. I think Delilah might be similar to one of these. Sheen and Mia down here, just to kind of see the differences between them. So over here are the Makeup by Marios. So the 3 glittery toppers there. Then you have the Natashas here. So you have Sheen, which is up here. Delilah is in the middle. And Mia is down here, which is more pink. Really, the two that look the most similar are Delilah, sorry, it's hard to point, Delilah, which is here from Natasha Denona, and then this one from the Makeup by Mario. I don't know the names of the Makeup by Mario shades off the top of my head, but as you can see, the Natasha shades give that same kind of wet look as these, but the Natasha shades just have more of a base pigment in them. They're not intensely pigmented, obviously, because they're just meant to give that wet lid look, but they do have more color than the Makeup by Mario. They feel very similar in the swatches. Putting them on, the consistency definitely feels similar. They give that wet look. You just get a little bit more color from the Natasha Denona palette. So the darker shade from the Natasha palette, Delilah, I mean, I guess it's a bit similar to the Makeup by Mario. It has more color, as you can see. Then up here you have Sheen from Natasha with the light gold from Mario. I mean, not identical, but very close. Then this one down here is more gold from Mario, whereas the Mia shade from Natasha is more pink. Colors are not identical, but yes, they're going to give you a very, very similar look on your eyes. So if you're looking for that wet look, you can absolutely get the same effect with this Natasha palette. The colors just have a little bit more of a base pigment than the Mario ones do. The Mario palette also has this like light kind of peachy matte and then this kind of taupe matte here. It's very similar look-wise to Stone in this palette and Fair in this palette, so I want to swatch those next to each other. So here's those two swatched next to each other. So the taupier colors, these are the Mario shades, so the cream and then that taupe, and then this is Stone and Fair from the Natasha palette. So the Mario cream shade is warmer on the skin. It's kind of more of an ivory color. This one is more taupe. And then these two up here are pretty similar. So Stone from Natasha and then the same kind of color from the Mario palette. Very similar. Again, not identical in swatches, but again, on the eyes, they're gonna look very, very similar. And then in the Mario palette, you also get this shade here, which is kind of more, it's not one of the wet shimmers. It's just a metallic kind of sparkly shade. And I want to swatch this in comparison to the Natasha palette. So that is the Mario shade there. Looks closest to either Travertine up here or even maybe this Ella color. Those are actually not that similar, honestly. So you have the Mario shade here. Then you have Travertine in the middle and then Filigree right here, which is more bronze. This is more taupe. This is kind of duochrome kind of shade. It looks gold, but then it also kind of looks silver. And then if you look really close, the glitter in the Mario shade is kind of silver and gold. So not the same, but again, similar vibe. And then the one thing in the Mario palette that you don't really get in the Natasha palette are these warmer browns. So this brown here and then this brown over here, or even this brown. So that's one difference between the two. In the Natasha palette, they're the rosier shades. So you kind of replace the browns with this shade and Vague up here. But overall, the look that you can get, very, very similar to the Mario Ethereal Eyes. So if you were looking, if you always wanted the Ethereal Eyes, I think definitely go for the Natasha palette. And then of course I thought of the Glam palette. I'm sure a lot of people are comparing the two. So the Glam, yes, is, to me, this palette screams cool tones. When I see the Glam palette, I think silver. Overall, obviously you do get a few warmer shades in here, like you get this warmer brown and like this shade down here is warmer. Even this one up here is a bit warmer, but to me they're still pretty different. And obviously you don't get the different shadow formulas in the Glam palette that you do in this new one. But like in the Glam, you get this upper eyelid shade that's like a light pink. To me, it's kind of similar to the Whisper shade from the Natasha palette, but actually I think it's, yeah, the Glam is more pink. So the Glam shade, it says upper eyelid, it's like a light pink is there, and then Whisper from I Need a Nude is there. So Whisper is more taupey, kind of silvery. This one's more of like an icy pink, but a bit similar. Definitely both more of that standard metallic feel on those. Then in the Glam palette, you also have this shade here, which is a crease, and then that transition shade. That one up there, or this one here, kind of looks similar to Mesh from the Natasha palette. And then this one kind of looks like Stone, honestly, from the new palette. You have the Stone shade from I Need a Nude, and then you have the crease shade from the Glam palette. So as you can see, this one is much darker than this one. Overall, I would definitely say with the Glam palette, you can definitely get more depth. So if you're going for really dark, smoky, you want those darker shades, I would definitely go Glam over the I Need a Nude, because this one, you get this darker brown in here, but you also get this shade, which is, it's not a black, but it's like a dark kind of charcoal gray. A few of these shimmer metallics in here are much darker, like this one. You get this dark shade. I feel like you could definitely get more depth with this palette as opposed to this new one. I guess we can just compare this dark shade in the center of the Glam with the darkest shade in the I Need a Nude palette, which is Silhouette, which is more brown. Yeah, so this one is Silhouette from I Need a Nude, is more brown. This one is the Lash Line shade in the Glam palette, which is more, I would say more of like a gray. So you'll be able to see here. Sorry, I got swatches all over, but that's the one from the Glam palette. It's a bit deeper, more rich, closer to black than Silhouette, which is right here. And these are just one swipe swatches. So yeah, that kind of confirms what I was thinking, where the Glam is definitely going to give you more depth. This I Need a Nude is definitely on the lighter side. You can get a little bit of depth with that darker Silhouette shade. I just don't think you can get super intense dark depth with I Need a Nude. Depending on how dark your skin tone is, if you are medium tan, deep skin tones, this would probably be a bit easier to work with and make it work, just my opinion. If you have a more fair, light skin tone, definitely I Need a Nude. I think I Need a Nude is definitely more everyday friendly for most people than the Glam palette. Overall, for me, I can already tell you I will use I Need a Nude much more than I use the Glam palette. I love the Glam palette. I think it is stunning. I would never get rid of it, but the I Need a Nude is definitely more everyday, and then you can amp it up a bit to something like this that's a little bit smokier. Okay, and then I had to bring out the Patrick Ta Major Dimension palette. If you know my channel, you know how much I love this palette. Honestly, this one really doesn't remind me a whole lot of the I Need a Nude palette. This one is definitely much warmer overall. The only thing I would really compare would maybe be these two kind of lid toppers in this palette. But this lid topper formula is a much thicker, kind of chunkier formula. So those are the Patrick Ta's there. Yeah, so those are the Patrick Ta kind of lid toppers there. That one is the more pink one, and then that's the one that's more like a white color there. But in texture, those are just a little bit thicker, a little bit more chunky. They're not as light feeling as some of them in here. I guess the closest thing maybe would be Muse which may be my favorite shade, honestly, in this Natasha palette. It looks like that. So there's Muse from Natasha Denona, and there's the two Patrick Ta's there. More pigment for sure in the Muse shade. These are a little bit more transparent in the base. They have a little bit of color, but not a lot. This one definitely has more of a base to it, but they give that very wet lid look that I love. But yeah, honestly, this one doesn't really remind me of the I Need a Nude at all, but I love this palette. It's been one of my favorites since it came out. I love it, but just much warmer than the I Need a Nude. But like I said, if you want a comparison of literally every neutral leaning palette that you can think of, go watch Lauren's video. She literally compares everything. All right, I think that is everything for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. So overall, if you can't tell, I think this palette, it is stunning. 10 out of 10, more than 10 out of 10, 12 out of 10 recommend it. If the colors speak to you, I mean, I had no trouble with anything. The formulas, the blend, every single shade in here is beautiful. And more importantly, another thing that really is something I look for in a palette, and it doesn't happen often, is I will use every single shade in this palette. Literally every single one. And I cannot say that about most eyeshadow palettes. Even my Patrick Ta Major Dimension, which I love and I use it regularly, I do not use this reddish shade right here. I use all the other ones, but I don't use that one. With this I Need a Nude palette, I will use every single shade, and that speaks volumes. I love that you can do something really very, very minimal and everyday like we did in look 1, or you can add more glitter and a little bit of the deeper tones in the palette and get something a little bit more glam. I can't recommend it enough. I think the consensus on this palette so far is it is stunning and highly recommend. If the color story speaks to you, the only negative thing I could really see about it is kind of what I was talking about with the glam palette. You won't get as much depth with this palette as you will with that one. So depending on your skin tone and just what you're looking for in general, one might appeal to you more than the other, but that is my only critique. I have no other critiques. I absolutely love it. Those are my thoughts of the new I Need a Nude palette from Natasha Denona. Let me know which look you liked the best, 1, 2, or 3 in the comments. I will have all the products I use for each look and the palette listed below. They are affiliate links. If you do shop through them, I will make a commission that supports me and this channel, so thank you so much. Make sure to subscribe if you have not already, and follow me on Instagram at simply.blair and TikTok simply.blair1, and I will see you next time. Remember, simply be you. Bye.